Welcome to Devotions from Israel, a 5-minute word of encouragement. Today's text comes from Psalm 23 once again, as we look at a few other insights from this chapter. Psalm 23 is one of the most familiar psalms to people who place their faith in God. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Perhaps many of us know how this psalm begins. There are two other aspects of this psalm that I'll read for us once again, but I want to focus on two other aspects and perhaps draw some insights and applications from these two areas of cultural interest. Let's first of all read once again Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. A few insights as we talked last time about green pastures and the lack of perhaps a whole blanket of green vegetation most of the year and in most locations throughout Israel for shepherds. Well, if you are a good shepherd, you know exactly what a sheep needs. A sheep needs quiet waters. Perhaps the better way to translate this from the Hebrew is restful waters. Unlike goats, who are not as timid as sheep, they can drink to their heart's content from a river or a stream that's flowing. However, sheep are different. They're more timid, apprehensive of any running water. So a shepherd would know full well that sheep won't drink unless the water is still, quiet, or restful. Keep this in mind because at the end of this passage we'll also talk about how a shepherd provides water in a cup. But before we talk about that, we also have some insights in regard to anointing my head with oil. Now, this is exactly what shepherds did for their flocks. They anointed, sometimes with spices, in the oil, but they would anoint the head of their sheep with oil. This was for the purpose of preventing flies and other gnats to burrow in the hair, but also in the nostrils of the sheep, and hence, as a result, lay eggs and cause all kinds of aggravation for sheep. I also have heard it said that a sheep's head is anointed with oil in case their head gets caught in a thicket. The oil would perhaps allow a sheep to pull his head out from a thicket that maybe has captured that sheep and prevented that sheep from escaping. But the whole idea of anointing the head is for protection. Because if a gnat or a fly would lay eggs in the nostrils, it would really cause aggravation, even to the point where the sheep would pound his head against a rock, and even upon death would cause a great injury and indeed a death, perhaps at times, to a sheep that's bothered by this situation of gnats and eggs in the nostril. And yet a shepherd knows how to anoint the head of the sheep with oil. It's for the sheep's own good and protection. And yet, last but not least, as you see these images behind me, let's get back to this whole idea of quiet or restful waters. Because oftentimes a sheep, when it's available, would draw from a well of water, and then in a trough, let's call it a cup, he would pour, or she would pour, water into this trough, and if you were a good shepherd, you would keep this trough filled to overflowing with water. And as long as there would be water, the sheep would come and drink of it. Now, you can picture sheep coming to this trough, and this trough, or again, let's call it a cup, as the psalmist does, drinking heartedly of this water for refreshment. It would be quiet or restful water, and it would sustain the flock well. So when the psalmist says, "My cup overflows," I just love the image of the trough, perhaps, or even the aqueduct, where we have this water gently provided in a form where the sheep are not intimidated to drink, and yet they do so, providing what they need, water for the dry seasons of Israel. I like this image, and I hope you do too, because we have, as the Gospels tell us, a good shepherd. Jesus is our good shepherd, who anoints us with protection. We have been anointed with his Spirit. And yet he also provides for our needs living water. He is the living water. He is that water that can quiet our souls as we come to that trough or the aqueduct and drink thirstedly this water that he provides so abundantly. So in the dry seasons of life, perhaps the best turn we could make in our life is to turn to the Good Shepherd, Jesus, who provides for our needs and protects us with his goodness. Be encouraged today. Until next time, Shalom.